of the big political actors we have in governance actually sponsor terrorism in Nigeria. So if the government looks at its own house, look at government institutions, look at political actors, try to fish out those who are behind the sponsoring of terrorism and banditry in Nigeria, and actually fight corruption, actually look at ways to strengthen trust, I think that will go a long way. The federal government has to do a lot. They could actually look at the security agencies we have in the country, invest in the security agencies, train and retrain these these security agencies, these security personnel, train them, invest in them, because you cannot go to fight these bandits, these people who engage in kidnapping and other terrorism acts without having sophisticated weapons. Because if those terrorists has been sponsored, then be rest assured that they are being given the best of equipment or weapons to actually come to create havoc or wreak havoc in our communities. So the government should actually look at the security agencies and invest in them, give them what they need to fight insecurity in Nigeria. Just like our respondent said, economic development as well. The federal government should look at ways to engage the youth. They should look at ways to provide employment for Nigerians, so that we don't have people who go into crime with the excuse of we don't have anything to do, we have to fend for ourselves. Well, it lies in the hands of everyone. Everyone has to put their hands on deck and work on tackling insecurity. Let's not just leave it to the federal government alone. Even in our community engagement can actually help curb or tackle insecurity. If the communities work hand in hand together, if they understand what it means to safeguard the community, if they know each other, if they partner with security agencies, we can tackle insecurity. If you see something around your area where you live or the community where you reside in, something strange, you see a stranger with strange movements, talk to the security personnel you have around you. Report these things that happen, so that the security agencies will be proactive in helping to curb insecurity in your area. So let's put our heads together to make sure that our dear country, Nigeria, is safe, and we actually fight corruption, we fight insecurity and terrorism in our country. And that's Street Talk this morning. Let's now move on to our next feature, which is trending headlines. Let's look at different newspapers this morning, and let's see what's trending this morning. We have the Guardian newspaper, we have the Nation, the Vanguard, the Nigerian Tribune, the Punch, the Daily Independent, the Daily Times, and the Daily Trust newspapers for review this morning. I'll start with the Guardian newspaper. On the Guardian newspaper, we have as major headline, fraud allegations and money laundering. EFCC intensifies manhunt for Bello, detains Sirika, freezes 300 accounts. You can find that story on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. And then we have blackout cripples business activities in Taraba, Gombe, Adamawa. That's on news page 30. CBN to sell $16 million to BDCs at 1,021 naira to a dollar amid fresh panic in FX market. That's on business page 15. Anxiety as Ihedioha, others quit PDP, Court sacks Imo party chairman. That's on news page 4. NSIB NCAA probe Dana Air runway incident in Lagos. That's on news page 5. Ganduje summons Ayedatiwa, 15 Guba aspirants over Ondo APC primary outrage. That's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Less than 20% of Nigerians access 12 hours per daily. That's on news page 3. And then we have lastly on the Guardian newspaper, federal government probes bullying incident at British International School, Abuja. Get that on Metro page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. Moving on, let's now take a look at the Nation newspaper this morning. The Nation newspaper this morning has its major headline, EFCC arrests Sirika, slams Emefiele with fresh charges. And the writer, Anti-graft agency boss speaks on Yahaya Bello, Beta Edu, others. Federal government appoints new consulate general for US, Germany, China, UAE, others. That's on page 2. At the top strip of the Nation newspaper, we have CBN sells dollar to BDCs at 1,021 naira in fresh injection. That's on page 5. Ekiti excited over next node to generate power. The rider, government takes charge. That's on news page 29. And we have on page 4, GMO 6 cancellation as Ododo submit Ondo APC report. On page 26, Igodalo urges issue-based campaign ahead Edo 2024. Government tightens import duty exemptions. That's continued on page 29 of the Nation newspaper. First Lady turns sword of alternative high school for girls. That's on page 4. My view on state police personnel, says IG Egbetukon. You can get that on page 29. And lastly, on page 4 of the Nation newspaper, Ihe Dioha quits PDP. Now let's look at the Vanguard newspaper. On the Vanguard newspaper, we have the photo speak here. I guess that's the major headline. Yes, the photo speak and the major headline says, Dangote refinery cuts diesel jet A1 prices to 940 naira, 980 naira. The riders, price cut to impact nation's economy, says Man. Will reduce pressure on foreign exchange, says CPPE. It's relief to transport operator, says Albon. That's on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. At the top strip, CBN slashes BDC exchange rate to 1,036.3 naira to a dollar. That's on page 20. On page 8, federal government appoints 17 new charge d'affaires. And we have on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper, Okwama Ewu, community declares 17 soldiers killed along Focados River. And the riders says no Okwama villager attacked soldiers, explains how overzealous soldiers killed wounded elders and leaders. On page 8, will ensure Yahaya Bello faces trial no matter what it takes, says EFCC chair. British International School shocked over bullying of students. That's on page 12. On page 13, murdered professor's last interview. Kidnappers, terrorists don't deserve mercy. And then we have in sports, NFF board delays appointment of Super Eagles coach. That's on page 37 of the Punch newspaper. And let's move on to the Nigerian Tribune. On the Nigerian Tribune newspaper this morning, we have its major headline, EFCC exposes Bello, grills Sirika, freezes 300 accounts. The riders says ex-Kogi governor took $720,000 from state account to pay child's school fees. Begins probe of contract awards in presidency, NAS, judiciary, others. Explains how banks lost 8 billion naira to electronic transfer in 2022. Nigeria losing $500 million annually to cybercrime. Stop harassing me. Respect rule of law. Nigerian Tribune. That was the major headline. Get that on page 4 and 5 of the Nigerian Tribune. And at the top strip, we have CBN sells fresh dollars to BDCs at 1,021 naira to a dollar. Again, Dangote crashes diesel aviation fuel prices to 940 naira, 980 naira. NSIB begins probe into Dana Air incidents. That's on page 16 of the Nigerian Tribune. At the top strip, or the bottom strip now, we have amid protest, petitions, Ododo submits report of Ondo APC primary. The writer says NWC will ratify Ayedatiwa as candidate. Ganduje assures. That's on pages 3 and 4. Emeka Ihedioha dumps PDP. That's on page 8. Fubara reshuffles Rivers cabinet. That's on page 4. And lastly, movement to be restricted for Oyo LG poll. That's on page 28 of the Nigerian Tribune. Next is the Punch newspaper. On the Punch newspaper, we have as major headline, EFCC may prosecute 300 forex racketeers. That's on page 2. The riders, EFCC gets order to freeze 300 accounts, says one account transacted $15 billion illegally. Naira would have crashed massively if 300 accounts were not frozen, says chairman. At the top strip, Air Nigeria, Sirika goes on trial for 8 billion naira. 8 billion naira fraud, that's on page 30. Air Nigeria, Sirika goes on trial for 8 billion naira fraud. Dangote drops diesel to 940 naira, station sell 1,400 naira. That's on page 21. And on page 23, CBN releases more dollars as naira weakens to 1,300 naira to a dollar. At the bottom strip, bullying, Abuja school shot, victim may sue. That's on page 22. Yoruba Nation, Afenifere slams Akintoye Igboho. That's on page 7. Lautech students seek justice for cop allegedly. Okay, Lautech students seek justice after cop allegedly kills copper. That's on page 4 and 5. 50,000 schools listed for federal government safe school scheme. That's on page 7. Now let's look at the Daily Independent newspaper. Major headline on the Daily Independent says, airlines set to reduce fares as man sees inflation easing. That's on page 29 of the Daily Independent. Let's look at the top strip. Top strip says, Afenifere dissociates self from call for Yoruba exit from Nigeria. Tinubu okays 20% palliative for traditional and religious institutions. On page 7, we have these headlines. Alleged 8 billion naira fraud. EFCC arrests, grills ex-minister Hadi Sirika. Dana aircraft skids off runway at Lagos airport as NSIB commences investigation. Edo Guba, let's make our campaigns issue-based. Igodalo urges co-contestants. On page 6, Yahaya Bello, anti-corruption groups condemn EFCC's tactics, insist on due process. The rider, Kogi Assembly demands removal of wanted tag from Bello's name. Lautech student on rampage as security agent kills student, injures 2. Electricity tariff, Reps Speaker mulls bill for NAS, stakeholders consultation before hike. And lastly, Atiku's camp depletes as Ihedioha dumps PDP. That's on page 6. Moving on to the next paper, which is the Daily Times newspaper this morning. Major headline says, electricity tariff, Speaker to sponsor bill for compulsory NAS stakeholders consultation. That's on page 4. At the top strip, NIMET DG states challenges facing early warning system. At the bottom strip, Minister summons lead British international school over bullying allegation. That's on page 3. Troops neutralize scores of terrorists in Katsina and Zamfara. That's on page 2. Soldier on birthday spree accidentally kills villager in Plateau State. Sex scandal. UNN ASU distances self from lecturer seducing married students. On page 5, former Imo governor Ihedioha resigns from PDP. And now our last paper for review this morning is the Daily Trust newspaper. And the major headline says, how EFCC nabbed Sirika over 8 billion naira fraud. The writers sacked directors for interrogation. Ex-minister brother's account remains frozen. That's on page 4. At the top strip, we have NSIB probes Dana aircraft skid incident. That's on page 5. It's wrong to increase electricity tariff without consultations, says Speaker. Sokoto sacks 15 district heads over insecurity, land racketeering, others. At the bottom strip of the Daily Trust, Abuja British school bullying sparked outrage, closure. That's on page 3. Federal government appoints 17 new charge d'affaires consuls. That's says General. That's on page 26. And on page 6, bandits kill 3, abduct 8 in Kaduna communities. And the last headline from the Daily Trust newspaper this morning says, I'll resign if Yahaya Bello is not persecuted, says EFCC chairman. Now let's come back to the studio as we're joined by our analyst this morning, Engineer Meshach Oza. Good morning, Engineer Meshach.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very wonderful morning.
Welcome to Newspaper Analysis this morning.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
The headlines this morning are quite interesting, but few of them run across all the papers this morning. Let's start with the Nation newspaper. Major headline of the Nation newspaper says, EFCC arrests Sirika, slams Emefiele with fresh charges. While you're going to be analyzing this one, let's merge it with Yahaya Bello and EFCC. EFCC chairman has vowed to resign if Yahaya Bello is not prosecuted. Also, we have EFCC exposes Bello. That's Bello. Grill Sirika freezes 300 accounts. And there was one I saw on the Better Edu. But then let's just look around
I think basically it's
corruption and fraud.
It is not, look, the AFCC should not be like the dog that can bark but cannot bite. We need prosecution processes that end in logical judgments, like they handle Yahoo Boys cases. There's always a judgment. We don't want negotiated judgment. We don't want buy up judgment. We want judgment that will be premised on the available evidences portraying the guilt of these players. And I don't want selective treatment. I mean, what of the likes of Matawale, what of Pentami? These are people that have cases that must be investigated. It's a shame. If you have said now you have investigated this certain individual, Sirika, you investigated Better Edu, and they have found accounts that means these people have been indicted. They should be placed, they should be arrested immediately and prosecuted. You don't give them bail. You don't give them executive freedom, executive bail of self-recognition when they have looted the country dry. For the case of Bello, it's very laughable.
It's laughable because this writer here in the Nigerian Tribune says, Kogi governor took $720,000 from state account to pay child school fees.
About when he was leaving power, he took that amount to pay child school fees ahead. What a show of shame. I mean,
that's a huge amount. $720,000.
That means he has probably paid for up to his final year.
But the question is, how can a governor take this amount, $720,000 from state account?
Well, it's nothing to them. To them, the state, they own the state. A lot of governors.
So the governors can just walk to a.
They can't. It's in collusion. They can't. It's in collusion with maybe the The accountant general is in collusion with the commissioner of finance. It's not. It can't go there without the consent or the connivance of other players in the state executive council. So I mean, some other people are going to be culpable in this, and it's a show of shame because it is very disappointing. A lot of state governors seem to look at the COFAs of most states as their personal account, and they can do just anything with it. How can you, the common man, if you're building the standards, raising the standards of schools in your states, improving on the standards of education, you are paying ahead for your child's entire school duration, and with that staggering, that amount is even too much. There's nowhere you are going to pay 5 years course with $720. So there's more to that story. It's the $720,000. I mean, it calls for a lot of investigation. But I'm an advocate of fairness and justice. Okay. It should be investigated. And besides that, every other persons that are culpable. We have people. I have cases like Matawele. He has case with the EFCC. Some cases are just thrown. It's like if you are not in the good books of the government in power, they will make sure you are prosecuted for your financial crimes. There must be equitable dispensation of justice. If you are found to be wanting in any way during your advocacy as governor or whatever, you must face the same crime, the same music, without fear of favor, without bias to political affiliation.
Do you think we're actually going anywhere with our fight against corruption in Nigeria?
Yeah.
Because look at the EFCC has come out to say, oh, these are the allegations against Yahaya Bello. Yahaya Bello should be arrested, but he has gone into hiding in the same country where we all are. The IGP actually withdrew the policemen that were attached to him, and Yahaya Bello is still missing. And now he came out to say he will he would resist arrest by the EFCC, but he is going to appear in court.
That's laughable.
So do you think we're actually going anywhere? Are we, moving on or moving forward with our fight against corruption in Nigeria?
Well, I think there's a little bit of improvement. I won't say we're moving at a snail speed. And until, they use the same force they are using in prosecuting the so-called Yahoo boys, if they can use that kind of energy to prosecute corrupt politicians as well and achieve justice. It's not just pursuing them, then in the long run, they will say they will take a plea bargain. There's no plea bargain. They must go to jail. And I think there's an improvement because government begin to, but I think where I have an issue is that it's looking like a selective prosecution. Everybody, whether you are an advocate or a proxy of government, or you are not, must face the same music if you have been found to be wanting. So there should not be selective treatment. Anybody that has stolen state funds, that has stolen public funds, that have been found wanting by investigation by the EFCC must be made to face the full wrath of the law. Selective treatment debases the quality of justice, and of course it brings into question the credibility of our judicial system. So I'm not an advocate of selective. Anybody, if he has been found guilty, must face the full wrath of the law. And people, if they have been found guilty, must not be allowed to move freely. They must be stopped from movement. They must be completely incarcerated pending or they put under house arrest. Their movement monitored, their passports held back so that they don't get away. You can't steal this whole lot of money and think you can get away with it. And this Yahaya Bello man is full of a lot of arrogance, and I think that's not a true quality of a good leader. It should be submissive. Why did they have to be hiding? Why did they need? If he was truly, if he's truly worthy, if he doesn't have anything to hide, he should allow. The FCC chairman said he had been inviting him. That look at the petitions that we have. Come and clear yourself. Invited him personally. He asked the FCC that they should come to his village. The FCC chairman said he was scared that a certain woman in the FCC wants to arrange people to mock him when he's called, harass him over 100 people. The FCC chairman looked at it and I said, okay, you follow the chairman's gate and to my floor. There we have other gates. And
it's only in Nigeria we see this kind of things play out.
Exactly.
Someone who the EFCC says has this fraud allegation against is giving the EFCC conditions before he appears. It only happens in Nigeria, and I totally agree with you when you said we're moving at a snail pace, because how long will it take for them to conclude the investigations on Betta Edu? Conclude it, and if she's guilty, let her be prosecuted. we keep hearing this. The
One
EFCC
story
has
after
arrested
another,
this person. This person has been invited over for questioning. We want to see the EFCC indeed conclude their investigations and prosecute those who are
That's
guilty,
it.
those who have stolen the nation's money, because this money they've been calling, they're quite huge.
Quite
Over
huge.
300 accounts have been frozen. $720,000 paid for your child's school fees. It's quite huge.
People are wicked.
Terribly wicked. Now let's move on to another headline. This headline cut across all the papers this morning. Did you see that video of the bullying that happened at the British International School?
Yes, I did.
So the headline here on the Guardian newspaper says, Federal government probes bullying incident at British International School.
Yes, a lot of these institutions that this became viral is the reason the school is reacting, the reason the parents are reacting, is the reason. There are so many, over 90% of bullying cases and misdemeanor within most private elite schools go unreported. And there's so much insanity in this school, so much high-handedness, so much peer influence in most of these big private schools that you pay millions to train your children. And it's laughable. I think the federal government needs to take serious action on this one. And a lot of private school owners need to understand that they give us the impression, look at a certain private university coming out to say, all these girls were virgins, they are virgins for the graduate, they are the one at Ilele, Madonna. And it was laughable when one of the girls came and said it's a lie, that she wasn't the virgin. So you don't create an ambience of tranquility, an ambience of quality education, but not trying to improve the standard of living or the personalities of these children. Look, there's so much bullying going on in private schools, going on in boarding houses, going on in not just private universities. And I think the public is beginning to lose trust, because immediately after the video went viral, majority of the parents came that, look, they want to withdraw their children, and they withdraw their children. I saw the visuals of that as well. So for me, the federal government needs to look more at commercialization of private institutions, because a lot of them they are using it for commercial purpose, basically, not for improving the standard of education. So I think we need to look more into that.
And then what role do you think parents have to play? Because looking at bullying in schools, it's terrible. Young children,
Well, it's
as
difficult.
young as they
It's
are,
difficult. It's
could
difficult.
inflict such pain on the
Yes.
fellow students.
Blessing, it to be difficult for parents to play much role, because these students are within the confines of, in quotes, the schools already.
Yeah.
So it's expected for those 3 months or for the semester these children are going to be, it is the responsibility of the school at this time. You see, a lot of peer influence, the influence of social media, peer influence. There's so much cultism in some of these private universities, but the owners do not.
We're talking about secondary school here.
Even in the secondary school, there's so much cultism in some of the secondary schools, rather, and the parents do not even have an idea, because their dual personalities, their children present dual personalities. The children, the personality in school is quite different from the personality at home.
Yes.
And the influence of peers. So the ego, there's even tribalism within private secondary schools. So it's difficult for parents do their bit at home. But the school, since it's a boarding house like BIT in Abuja now, the school needs to play more role. They should stop covering. Look at the young man that was killed, was killed in a private school as well. Yes. And so many other cases of social vices being exhibited by students in private secondary schools, especially in Abuja. Calls for questioning the integrity and the processes that leads to award of license to most of these private school practitioners who just do that for business and are hardly on ground to oversee the day-to-day running of these schools.
Well, for me, I think when it comes to boarding schools, the school authority and the teachers have a big role to play, because when parents take their children to schools, especially boarding schools,
it's in trust.
They leave these children in the hands of the school owners, the school administration, and teachers. And I think teachers need to pay attention to their students, to really monitor these children closely, because this issue of bullying, look at the case of this other young boy that we lost.
Yeah.
And the autopsy came out to say, it's not as a result of
very laughable.
That's just it. So teachers have to be careful. If you are a teacher of a particular class, know that those children are under your care. and they should monitor them closely.
The teachers can be after school. They will go to the hostels. You
The,
have, you have
the hostel
yeah,
matrons and
matrons
the
and house
patrons,
masters
yes,
and all that. How
they should
can
be
you,
careful.
you know, you see,
They
yes,
should watch these children.
it's difficult because this age, these children at this age, digital children, they're beginning to be so much ahead of parents and not to talk of teachers. I went to a boarding house. I was there at such a young age as 11, from Warri to Mina in Niger State at that young age. And of course, we had school fathers, we had school mothers.
Okay.
There was organization that then. We didn't have the influence of phones and social media. There was less peer pressure. There was we had house masters that came to check. There was orderliness. There was prep time. There was lights out time. In as much there was still bullying, but not at the scale that it is now. That, I mean, with the aid of social media, they use it as more like as a status symbol. Bullying. They want to put it on social media and all that. So the girl came out to apologize, and the way you say the apology, the video of the apology, when I looked at it earlier on this morning, you could see she was apologizing out of influence, probably influence of the school proprietor. He was looking at somebody, maybe she was reading out the apology from a written paper card or something, but you will know that she wasn't feeling remorseful.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's keep watching, and let's see how it will play out, because now the federal government are going to probe the incident, and the school has been shut temporarily for three days or thereabouts. Let's see how that plays out. Let's move on now. The Vanguard newspaper has this big headline. It's full to speak as well, that says Dangote Refinery cuts diesel Jet A1 prices to 940 naira and 980 naira.
Well, Blessing, it's difficult for me to take anything coming out of the Dangote Refinery saga seriously.
Why?
Yes, trust issues. I mean, the government came up, until I see them start selling it in filling stations or retail outlets at the amount that has been stipulated, I won't take them serious, because they told us Dangote Refinery will start by September, we'll have fuel, price of fuel will crash, that didn't happen. They said by December, it still hasn't happened. So, I mean, it's wait and see. I don't want to comment on this because I'm very angry. I've been very angry with the trust, the displacement of priorities between the government at the federal level and Dangote Refinery. It's like they're taking us for granted. They think Nigerians are totally gullible, and they want to just give us, they believe that anything they tell us, we should take it hook, line, and sinker. Totally disagree.
Okay, the Punch has it this way. Dangote drops diesel to 940 naira. Stations sell 1,400.
On my way out of here, maybe when I come tomorrow, I will tell
us the price.
Tell her, yes.
Okay.
And let me get the price confirmation.
All right. The PDP, a big news from the PDP. Emeka Ihedioha dumps PDP.
Well, it's not a surprising issue. You know, a lot of them they have the opinion that if it would have been better if you had said Emeka Ihedioha dumps politics, because now if you're dumping PDP, that's the struck party you had. That means you're obviously going to go to another party. Our politicians do not have politics. I've rarely seen in my life where you see a conservative dumps Conservative Party for the Labour Party in the UK, or a Republican dumps Republican Party for the Democratic Party. The two parties have different ideologies. So it's either you are dumping or you're resigning from active politics, not dumping the party because of the political ideology that's been imbibed in you, or you are retiring from politics entirely. Say you are dumping the PDP, it's always probably because the situation doesn't favor them, and there have been carrots being thrown at them to come join the APC. So it's really pretty difficult.
Okay. Moving on now, there's this headline here that says, Electricity Tariff, Rep Speaker mulls bill for NAS, stakeholders consultation before hike. The Daily Trust captures it this way. It is wrong to increase electricity tariff without consultations, says Speaker.
Absolutely wrong. And it's not just the rightness or the wrongness of what they did that's hurting me, the lies they said about it. Now, they lied that it's only band data was increased. My dear, all the bands were increased because a 2,000 naira unit card that could give you 36 units, what you have now is only about 12 units. That means the entire bands were actually increased. Now, if you look at it, majority of us don't even have band. The lowest band, which is band E, give you light for between 4 to 12 hours. Like me, I don't even get light from between 0 to 3 hours. So I don't even have a band. Most of us are on DLA Road, we don't have a band. Most of us are on Gokwana Road, we don't have a band. So where do you place us? And you're still being estimated bill. A lot of us have paid for meters that we have not seen to date. So who is messing with who?
And then there's this headline on the Guardian newspaper that says less than 20% of Nigerians access 12 hours power supply daily.
Yes, I think it's very correct. Like what I was just saying, less than 20%. That's 12 hours is a glorious time frame. I mean, a lot less than that. That's what people assess, and you
even the band A consumers they don't even get up to
20 hours that they are forcing them
supply
to pay for. It's laughable.
Okay, let's take another headline. The Air Nigeria. Okay, no, we've talked about the Sirica's issue. CBN releases more dollars as naira weakens to 1,300 naira dollar. Just last week we were celebrating that the naira has
look, what a lot of people don't understand what the government is doing. Now the government is digging into the foreign reserves. It's affecting our gross domestic GDP.
Okay.
You're digging into the foreign reserve to shore up the dollar, to help improve the naira, which is wrong. The only way you can help improve the naira is to stop. That's why you see there's no commensurate response on the prices of goods and services, because it is not affected by the forces of demand and supply.
Okay, those are the headlines we'll take this morning.
Thank
Just
you.
before you go, your last words.
Nigeria will be better. Nigeria will be better.
You
Let's
have
just be
hope
hopeful.
that the job will be better.
I have more than any. But then the AFCC should back and bite.
The EFCC chairman has actually, he says he would resign if Yahaya Bello is not prosecuted. So we're actually watching. We'll see if indeed he will truly resign if Yahaya Bello is not prosecuted. Thank you so much, Engineer Mesha Kosa, for joining me this morning on Paper Review. It's always a pleasure to have you on set.
Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks.
All right, moving on, next is our interview segment this morning. This morning on our interview segment, we'll be looking at the impact of high inflation on Nigerians, and we have as our guests Ambassador Dr. Eris Jewebi, Executive Director, Working Fingers International Initiative. Please have a wonderful time in this interview.
welcome to this segment of Morning Ride right here on Delta Television, Asaba, the People's Pride. We're looking at something that is being common with us, something that is almost looking like a permanent situation. But God forbid it to be a permanent situation, the high inflation rate in Nigeria. Some people will say it's not only happening in Nigeria. Yes, we agree it's not only happening in Nigeria. But what is the government doing to actually assuage the situation right here in our dear country? So this morning we'll be looking at the impact of the high inflation rate on Nigerians. You looked around you, have you actually paid attention to what is happening around you? People are suffering. People barely eat. People barely can afford the basic necessities of life. Well, to do justice to this topic, impact of the high inflation rate in Nigeria on Nigerians is no other than Ambassador Dr. Eris Jowo Ibi, FHCD. She is the Executive Director, Working Fingers International Initiative, an association against child, sexual and gender-based abuse.